All right, guys, it's 6:30.
I know, it's part of the jokes.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
I know they don't. This is part
Today is Monday, September 12th. Planning Board regular meeting, and then we will be breaking and moving on to a study session. Do you see a different time somewhere else? Okay, I see 6:30. Okay, roll call.
Chair Elrod,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Rudnicki,
Here.
Board Member Bolt,
Here.
Board Member Graham is absent, Board Member Miles is absent, Board Member Samuelson,
Here.
Board Member Corbett is absent, Board Member Kruger, and Board Member Stallman.
Here.
And Board Member Graham just stepped into the building.
That won't do.
Thank you. Okay, the agenda tonight, we do have a public hearing, and then we will be breaking and then moving on to a study session. Anybody have any changes to the agenda, or can I get approval of the agenda as is? No changes? Okay. Moving on, minutes from the August 22nd regular meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
So move to approve?
Second.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion carries. And Board Member Miles has arrived.
Thank you for joining us, Marcy. All right. So we will start first with, we have no general business items this evening, and we will move to the public hearing. You guys up and ready? Andrew, Marcy, you good?
Madam Chair, are you ready, or do you want me to?
We're ready.
Okay. Good evening, Planning Board. Carol Kuhn, representing Planning and Neighborhood Services. The project before you this evening is Resolution Number 16-2016, which is for approval of a plan development overlay for a property located at 5586 South Sycamore Street. Amy Terry is the property owner and applicant, and she will be making a presentation this evening. Plan development overlay applications are reviewed and approved by the Planning Board. During the public hearing, the Planning Board approves with conditions, continues, or denies the request. In addition to this PDO application, the applicant has submitted a subdivision exemption. Did it not go? Sorry, we're not on the right. It's not advancing. Okay, sorry. In addition to this PDO application, the applicant has also submitted a subdivision exemption and a site development plan, which are both administrative processes. If the PDO is approved by the Planning Board, these two applications can move forward. The subject property consists of one lot located at 5586 South Sycamore Street between West Berry Avenue and West Powers Street within a mixed-use neighborhood north of Main Street. The subject property consists of one lot totaling 5,950 square feet. It is located in the downtown neighborhood plan of the comprehensive plan and sub-area 2 of the downtown design standards and guidelines. The property is zoned CA, multiple use district. CA is a multiple-use district, which permits a variety of residential and commercial uses. Currently, there is one existing, well, at the time of the writing of the staff report, there was currently one existing structure on the site that has subsequently been demoed through a demolition permit. The proposed duplexes within the area is characterized by a wide variety of buildings, including larger commercial buildings, apartments, and 3-story townhomes, which are under construction, as well as smaller existing homes. There's also 2 commercial parking lots on this section of Sycamore. As I mentioned, this is a photo of the site. A demo permit was issued for the existing structure. This is a photo from the north corner of the site looking toward West Powers Avenue. It's to give you a perspective of the setback that exists right up to that corner on that existing home. This photo is taken from the north side of the property, looking towards the north side of the adjacent parking lot, looking north. The recently approved PDO, it was in July 25th of this year, for 5546 and 5556 South Sycamore. You can see that on the right. The project proposes a 3-story residential unit on each lot for a total of 2 dwelling units. Each unit will front onto South Sycamore Street with rear alley-loaded garages. The proposed front setback is 10 feet. The PDO application is a request to reduce the predominant front setback from 18.5 feet to 10 feet and to increase the open space from 10% to 30%. A variety of building materials are proposed, including stone veneer, stucco, and lap vertical siding. The project includes decks at multiple levels and a rear courtyard for each unit. At a future date, the applicant intends to subdivide the lot, resulting in a total of 2 lots, which both would be included in this PDO area because it's for the single lot, which could subsequently be subdivided. The subdivision exemption would enable the owners to sell the dwelling units individually and would not alter any zoning requirements of the PDO or result in any visual changes to the development. The purpose of the plan development overlay is to reduce the building front setback, the predominant front setback, from 18.5 feet to 10 feet, and to increase the required open space from 10% to 30%. A plan development overlay criteria addresses high-quality development and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the downtown design standards and guidelines. This is the proposed predominant front setback reduction. It is also contained in the staff packet in the PDO exhibit on page 2 of 5. In section 1095, the zoning code sets forth development standards that may be varied by a PDO. The applicant's request for deviation from the predominant front setback established for the block is one of the performance standards that can be deviated through the PDO. The CA zone district does not have a setback requirement. However, section 1041A2 of the zoning regulations specifies that new development on the block face be consistent with the established front setback for the block. Under this section, the Community Development Department has determined that the setback shall be established as the average of the existing setbacks at the time the application was submitted. At the time that this application was submitted, there were additional structures on the block, as depicted in Figure 3 here on the slide, and also within your staff report. The calculation is based on the side of the block for which the subject property is located. It's not the entire block face, it's just the side that this is proposed. The front setback for new construction on the subject properties is 18.5, but the applicant is requesting to reduce this to 10 feet. However, they are requesting that this reduction accompany a 30% increase of the open space to 30%. This is from the site, the PDO application that you have in your packet, and this is just their site plan. It's also consistent with what is shown in the subsequent SDP application. They're proposing, like I mentioned, to do a subdivision exemption to divide this into 2 lots further to allow for individual ownership of each of the units. This is the proposed west elevation, and the applicant is proposing a 3-story duplex product with front porches. And as I mentioned, the applicant is proposing 30% open space. The open space does not include the driveway or the apron behind the garages. According to the definition in the code, the garages, anything that an automobile crosses cannot contribute to the open space. So the open space is actually the other areas, as you can see, hatched on this, this plan here. So a PDO must demonstrate special attention to creative, high-quality design and to produce a development that reinforces and complements citywide and neighborhood design goals and objectives. So I'm going to run through the criteria in just quick detail. It's outlined specifically in the staff communication. As for this comes from 10.9.5. A, the applicant is not requesting a deviation or any relief from the height requirement, which in CA is 40 feet or 3 stories. The lot width and setback. There's no building setback in the CA, but as I previously mentioned, the predominant front setback, it does govern in this area. And as I showed you in the previous slide, it is 18.5 is the average setback for this block face of South Sycamore. And the applicant is requesting that the predominant front setback be reduced to 10 feet for this application. The applicant is not requesting relief from the minimum lot size for multiple family, and the applicant is requesting to increase the minimum open space from 10% in the CA zone district to 30% because they feel that that provides a better product. The larger open space requirement will allow the area for pets and children to safely play outside and provide adequate room in the alley for vehicular access, but as I mentioned, it does not include the apron or the driveway going to the garage. Off-street parking and loading and industrial parking criteria are not applicable to this application, nor is the parking garage criteria. However, consistency with the approved design guidelines in sub-area 2 are applicable, and they're discussed in the following slide. So standard 2.2.1 S2 talks about the facades and using high quality materials and window entries, and this application, the proposed duplex faces South Sycamore Street, and the design includes predominant entrances and front porches with a primary entrance for each residence facing South Sycamore Street. Windows are placed at all 3 levels of the units with ground floor entry having large windows and a recessed front porch. Standard 2.2.2 S3, the proposed duplex does not propose any curb cuts or driveways on South Sycamore Street. The vehicle access will be from the existing alley behind the property. Standard 2.23 S1, the proposed duplex does not propose surface parking between the front facade and the street. Each unit will have a 2-car garage accessed off of the existing rear alley, and the applicant has also included a turning template and a radius to prove that the turning template does work to access the garages safely from the alley. Standards 2.24 S1 and S2, gas meters are located on the side of each residence, and trash collection areas are located between the rear of the building and the rear alley. Standard 2.25 and 2.5 G1. So a question came up about this. On the site, on-site open space provision, there's no specific standard in the design standards about this provision. However, there's a guideline that discusses the construction and major additions on property along South Sycamore Street and Powers, stating that the new construction should preserve the existing front setback established by the older residential houses along the street by 10 feet plus or minus. So it's not a standard, but it is a guideline. Since there were no standards for that provision, I included the guideline. Standard 2.31 SA. The duplex has a variety of window shapes and sizes and patterns that relate to the interior functions, and the proposed design of the duplex provides human scale by the use of covered front porches with railings, generous window openings at the first story, and sufficient front yard landscaping. Standard 2.3.1 SA. The proposed duplex includes covered front porches with columns and roof overhangs that create opportunities for the interplay of light and shadow. Applications must also be consistent, demonstrate consistency with the citywide comprehensive plan. Policy 1.1 discusses generation of opportunities for residents to live, shop, and play where they work, and to work, shop, and play where they live. And this proposed development will provide new housing opportunities within the downtown neighborhood, which would afford opportunities to work, shop, and play. Policy 1.9B discusses increasing housing diversity and densities to help enliven the street and support stores and restaurants. And this proposed development will provide larger housing units within the downtown neighborhood, and new residents will be afforded opportunities to work and shop in their existing neighborhood. Also, PDOs have to be consistent and demonstrate consistency with the downtown neighborhood plan. Policy Land Use 3 and Land Use 6 discusses the character and a diverse mix of housing options. And this proposed duplex will utilize many of the architectural elements and building materials of the older single-family homes in the neighborhood, including front porches and lap siding, and also provides a mix of housing options for residents. The applicant has also provided a justification for relief from the predominant front setback, and that has been included in your staff communication. The applicant provided the justification for the 18.5 to 10-foot reduction in the predominant front setback to allow for the front porch, and also the applicant discussed the increase of the requirement of open space from 10% to 30% to provide a better product. The applicant also conducted a neighborhood outreach meeting on August 15th, and in general, the neighbors were generally supportive of the project, and a copy of the sign-in sheet was included in your packet. Staff finds that the proposed reduction in the front setback for 5586 South Sycamore Street and the added open space requirement meet the applicable criteria for a planned development overlay, and the resolution may be considered for approval. Staff is available to answer any questions. Otherwise, Amy Terry, the applicant and owner, is here this evening to make a presentation.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions for Carol before we go to the applicant? Lynn?
Why were there no elevations in the application? So that we could see how they were going to look and what they were proposing?
There were applications on pages 4 and 5 of your PDO application, of the PDO in the packet, if they're included in there.
I didn't see that.
Actually, it's pages 3 of 5 and 4 of 5.
Carol, could you put them on the overhead? Thank you.
I think it's,
And so, Carol, can you point out the height that is being proposed? I think it's 35.
face you.
The height proposed is 35 feet.
There it goes. While we find that, there you go.
I also have it on this slide as the main front elevation.
What does that say? I can't read that.
35 feet,
All the way to the top of the roof, or?
yes. And it's in the, to the very top, it is 35 feet. Maximum building height is 40, proposed height is 35. So you can see on, try again. on, it's just not, okay.
So state again, Carol?
So the proposed height is 35 feet from the top of the, I can show you on this,
Midpoint.
to this now. So this line out here, can you see it with the mouse right here? This line on the outside is representing the 40 feet, and it goes up farther. I cut it off on the slide. This line represents the building, actual building height, which is 35 feet.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
One of our concerns last time was that there'd be no living space over the porch, and there's living space over this porch. That's moving the living space into that setback and not just the porch.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer that.
Question?
Well, how about we save that
Perhaps
question?
yeah, the applicant could address that, but their proposal is a tuck under porch.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's actually a recessed porch under the living space.
And so maybe the follow-up question here is the 10-foot setback,
Is for the front of the building.
which includes that second floor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the porch sits underneath
Yes,
that?
it does.
Okay. Lynn, anything else? Okay. Any other questions for staff?
If you could go back to the slide prior to the one that's had the standard 2.25, maybe 4 or 5 slides back, you had a giant word that I had no idea what you meant.
Could be a
more.
giant word that,
Keep going. That one.
One.
Appurtenances.
appurtenances. Mechanical appurtenances.
What is this?
Appurtenances.
What does it mean in English?
Extra stuff.
A technical expression?
Technical expression, technically it's mechanical stuff, vents, things that stick up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking that question, Andrew.
It's like, yeah, that sounds great. And in the interest of rubber stamping things, sure, but no. So thank you. That's it.
Mark, you had some questions?
Yes. Let's see, to determine the front setback, you use the average for every single building on the side of the block, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's quite a few.
Well, not anymore. A lot of
I'm
them are
sorry,
gone.
not anymore?
No, a lot of them are gone, but I will show you that slide. Where did I have that slide? Here's the predominant front setback. So the existing structure up here is the Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health. There's a parking lot there. It's just from Berry to Powers. That's all that block. It's not all of Sycamore. It's just from Berry to Powers on this side of the block. So there's only 6
Oh, I understand,
structures.
just this block, right.
Right, 6 structures. And 2 lots were not counted because they were parking lots.
Right, I understand. Will this PDO change the average of the front setback of the block, or, because obviously if we keep, this will be our second possible approval of a PDO, which moves the building closer to the street, then the next one that comes before us can creep that much closer, or since it's a PDO, is it exempt from creating the average?
It would not be exempt from creating the average. This is a changing block face, and so any other new development that would come in would be subject to the existing setback at the time of the application. That's how that predominant front setback works.
So we have
I
other-
have a slide at the end here that, so if we were to take the PDO that was just approved, did some math, and if the PDO that was just approved, so going from 18.5, taking in 2 9s now because it was 2 lots, it would change the predominant front setback for this one if it were to be considered, but it's at the time of application, and those 2 applications were running neck and neck. But let's just run the scenario. If it came in today, you would have a predominant front setback of 14.83
So 14, from 18.5 to 14.3.
by adding those 2 9s.
Okay,
Again, the existing parking lots were not included. And I took the existing house that's up here that does not appear to be there in the pictures or in real life anymore, so that one's gone. But at the time of the application, the only things that have changed as far as new setbacks would be those 2 nines.
Got it.
Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. One last question. What is the what is the minimum setback of an alley access garage?
There is no setback if it is attached. If it's detached, it's 20 feet.
20 feet recent, okay.
If it's detached.
It's detached, okay. This is detached, there's no,
This is
Set-
attached.
this is attached.
So there's no setback.
There's no setback requirement.
Correct. But in your application, there's a turning template that's in there, and the applicant ran a turning template to make sure that it's in the PDO exhibit.
I missed that, I'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Anything else? Can you show how I want to understand a little bit better this question. The 20-foot setback is required when it's detached? Okay.
Garage.
And you're saying in this case, it's an attached garage. Can you show me how it's attached? Because I saw open space in between.
It's attached by a breezeway.
Got it.
There's an open courtyard right here, and it's attached by a breezeway,
Okay,
so that you don't have to go into the weather to get to your car.
okay. Thank you. Kurt or RC, any questions?
I don't have any specific questions, but I'm thinking if Mr. Corbett's not going to show up, maybe Lynn would want to move up at this point so she can vote.
Yes.
As a matter of procedure, we were going to get to that in a second, but thank you. So Lynn, you may stay there if you would like, and we would just do the roll call by vote.
Okay.
That works. So you will be voting tonight?
RC, do you have anything for Carol? No. Mark, you have another question?
I'm looking at the applicant's 5-page submittal.
See the turning, it must be on the SDP, I apologize.
I'm sorry?
Perhaps it's on the SDP, got those 2 applications confused, I apologize. It's on the site development plan application, which is not subject to the PDO requirements at this time. It's an administrative application, and
Okay.
it's on there, and they demonstrated it and ran a turning template using auto turn.
And we have no, I'll take it up with
It should
the
be up
applicant.
in, if it's on there, I don't have my plans, but it's up in it's on page 2 if it's there.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions either. We'll hear from the applicant now.
We're going to take a second to switch out stuff there.
Sure.
It looks like this in a thing that looks like. It's just a crumb. Maybe. I'll work over here on this one. And that one, right? Other way. Oh, it's so hard. Okay, I'll let you do it. You're the expert. Don't want to break her computer. And then does she need this too?
It's 50 feet, is that too high?
Okay.
Please, please, please.
25 feet per floor.
That was all. There's 3.
Hi.
Hi.
No credit.
All right, guys,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So I'm Amy Terry, I'm the property owner, and I also plan to occupy the property. So I'm going to live in one side of it and sell the other. So part of the design is, well, we'll go into why I designed it the way I did.
We're missing the times of the old poster boards.
I know.
They served a purpose. I might have crayons in my car. That helps.
Okay. Okay. So this is just pointing out, well, and it moved everything.
I'm sorry, can you just start from the beginning and state your name and your
Oh,
address, please?
sorry. My name is Amy Terry, and I'm the owner of the property. Is that what you asked? Okay. So this just shows what the zoning requirements are and the actual numbers of our property, and it shifted all the numbers. But what's allowable is 40 feet or 3 stories. We're building to 35 feet is the max of the roofs. The minimum unobstructed open space requirement is 10%. We're at 31%. Parking ratios is 2 per unit. We're putting in 2-car garages for each unit. The setback is the only change really that we're looking for to make it smaller. And then the lot size, you can see the minimum requirement is 575 square feet, and we're actually at 2975 square feet per lot. So I just wanted to demonstrate we're not trying to create this massive building. We're really trying to make the best use of the property. So the reason that we want to reduce the front setback is this is the turning radius diagram, and essentially we have a 12-foot setback off the alley. The property that we just demoed, the garage was actually right up against the alley, which directly behind us right now is a gravel lot, but we're thinking long-term, if somebody builds something behind us, we're going to need plenty of room to get in and out of the garages. So bumping the garages back 12 feet off of the alley ate up quite a bit of the alley. And then the second picture is we want to put a courtyard for grass and a patio in the back in between the units, or between the garage and the units. So there's a safe place for kids to play. For me personally, I have a German Shepherd and I need a place for her to go when I'm at work. So that's the reason that we had to kind of shift everything and shift the property forward. So you'll see this is the site plan. So this kind of addresses the question about the front porch and the second story. So you'll see the setback is 10 feet to the front porch, and then that front porch is 5 feet, and that second story bumps out 5 feet. So really, the property will completely stop at that 10-foot setback. And then in the back, we have a 17-foot courtyard and a 12-foot driveway. And really, we thought that was the best use of the lot and of the space. For resale, for me personally wanting to occupy the property, and the alleyway for, future development or changes. So this is, again, showing the diagram of how the original predominant front setback was established at the time of application. However, this is now what South Sycamore looks like. Those 3 properties are now demoed. So we've got the 2 single-family homes, the Arapahoe Mental Health Facility, and then the parking lots. And again, I did have a neighborhood meeting. I invited everybody around. Those 2 neighbors did not attend, never contacted me. I had 3 neighbors that did show up, and they all were not necessarily overwhelmingly supportive, but nobody had an issue with us bumping it forward. So this kind of shows an overview of what Sycamore looks like. And I get the spirit behind the predominant front setback, that you don't want to stick new construction, especially in an all residential area, that just doesn't match. But if you look at Sycamore, it's a good mixture of parking lots, commercial, residential, and across the street, there's things much closer. And particularly, it's kind of hard to tell on this, but the block just south of us on Sycamore, even a lot of the original homes are about 6 feet off. And then there's a ton of new construction that's much closer as well. So we feel like if you consider the whole block of Sycamore, that really will fit in easily within the average. And then this is just demonstrating the stars are all properties that have been newly constructed or under construction right now, which all have setbacks less than what we're looking for. And that's it. And my builder and architect are also here if you have questions for them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Lynn, is there any follow-up question? No. Mark?
I have concerns still regarding the living space that's over the porch. That was carefully considered in the last ones that we did. And at that time, I agreed that it should have been just the porch at the setback.
Do you have any questions specifically for the applicant regarding that?
Not regarding what they're proposing at this time, no.
Yeah, the setback of the garage concerns me a bit. The alley is a 12-foot right-of-way. I'm used to dealing with Denver alleys that are 14, maybe 16 if you're lucky. Garages, alley-loaded garages are minimum 5 feet setback, and you just K-turn your way in if you have a client that wants to push the garage back. You're looking at a 12-foot setback. Seems to me you're basically trying to get a car in without having to K-turn at all, and rather than pushing the building back, you are pushing it and asking for the bare minimum front setback.
So the 12 feet was actually, and Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what the engineering department wanted from us as far as a turning radius for the garages.
But it's who cares what they say? If it's an attached garage, you told me that it was a 0 setback.
I would love to.
Maybe you could,
If it's an attached garage, it's a 0-foot setback in CA because there are no setbacks in CA. If it's detached, it's 20 feet. It's not detached, it's attached. So it would not require a setback, but it is setback 12 feet to allow for that turning template, and they
but
accommodate.
it's not a requirement. They are doing it because they want to.
Yes.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with engineering requesting a 12-foot setback.
It is because engineering requested the 12-foot setback. It's
I'm
not a
sorry, say
requirement.
that again, please?
Engineering requested a 12-foot setback, or whatever was required to get the cars in the garage. They asked them to run auto turn, the turning template, and that's what it showed, that you needed a minimum of 12 feet to get the car in. That's what engineering asked them to provide. They are doing it because engineering has requested that. Our traffic engineer has requested that.
Again, I'll say in Denver, you back the car up and K-turn, you go in. It takes 2 K-turns, it takes 2 K-turns. That's the way it goes. It's in Denver, of course.
I understand, but the request isn't for any reduction in the setbacks. CA has no setbacks, so I'm not sure where the concern is coming from. They're offering more than the 0.
I think what he's saying is if you don't need
Talk in front of
12 feet in the
Use
alley.
the microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is that if we don't need 12 feet off the alley, we can bump the whole
That's what I'm saying.
structure back and have a larger. And in all honesty, our original plan was 15 feet, a 15-foot setback, but then because we had to bump everything so much farther forward, we actually shrunk the courtyard and the front setback to accommodate the 12 feet off the alley.
So who dictates here? Engineering or the code?
The city's traffic engineer looks out for health, safety, public health, and welfare, and this is what they have requested.
Requested or demanded?
Requested, and the applicant complied.
What if?
They still wouldn't have met. They originally asked for 15 feet. That's still not the predominant front setback of 18.5. They still needed to do a PDO.
Yes.
Right, but even still, who's jurisdiction covers here? Is this a request by the engineering department that we are to consider as part of it? Or if we as a planning board were to say we would actually like it to stick with the 18.5, allow the applicant to move the property further back if that indeed makes sense, which I have no idea if that makes sense at the moment, and shrink the size of the driveway. Because the example being in Denver, if you're on the alley and you are driving in, your garage is basically right on the alley. And so you got to back up and move forward, backward.
Right.
The moving back 12 feet allows, in essence, a whole nother car to sit in the driveway while you have one in the garage.
There's
If you
a
move it back, that would maybe be halved. That's irrelevant, but is there a reason why the entire building must be moved forward to accommodate for this 12 feet, or is that simply just a request that doesn't have any jurisdictional relevance in this conversation?
It's a 2-point issue. In the code, in the parking section, there's a requirement that all driveways accessing a private street or an alley must be a minimum of 10 feet in length. And so it mentions an alley, so a driveway has to be 10 feet in length. Engineering asked for 12 feet so that the turning template would work.
But that is not a rule of law.
No, but the 10 feet is as the minimum.
So an option, and I don't know if it's at any way feasible or even relevant, but an option to move the entire building back an additional 2 feet presently exists.
It could, yes. It would require site design changes and stuff, but yes.
I get all that. Is it the planning board's job to decide or council's job to decide how that is ruled out, or is that an administrative procedure to work through with your traffic department?
PDOs do not go to council, they stop with you.
Okay.
So it would be up to you to decide if you are going to allow the request for relief from the predominant front setback, which would be the 18.5 down to 10, or some other alternative, which you would have to put in a motion or an amended motion or conditions of approval that the applicant address. Because you get the final say in PDOs.
On the 10, so what you just stated, Carol, the 10-foot for a driveway, again, coming back to what zoning is saying, 0 setback, but then you're saying if there is a driveway, it needs to be 10 feet. So an option is there is no driveway, the garage butts up to the alley. Is that an option per the code?
I suppose with CA, it is an option because there's no setbacks. So,
Lynn,
I would like to know,
you have to speak into the microphone just for recording purposes.
I would like to know what in the courtyard constitutes an attached piece. I mean, it appears that it's an open issue. It's not
breezeway.
a connection to the buildings. You don't have a physical connection to the buildings.
Yeah.
There's the
I'm
breezeway.
gonna, if I can get back to the site plan here. Okay, I was gonna try to make it bigger. But if you can see right here, this is actually a hallway. So it's completely attached. There's a hallway here to the garages. We're gonna have French doors out to the courtyard here and a pass-through fireplace here. So it'll be open to that back courtyard, but this is an enclosed hallway on both units to the garage.
Any other questions from this side of the table?
Yeah, I'm curious from your architects or your opinion, this discussion of 10 feet versus 12 feet. Sounds like you were responding to the engineering department's request to go to 12 feet.
Correct.
With sliding the structure back 2 feet?
I don't recall what our very original proposal was. And honestly, part of, and Nick may be able to speak to it better, or Kieran, yeah.
You can
Well,
You can
on,
come
I'll
up.
let
You would need to come up.
This is Kieran, he's my builder.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kieran with Emerald Green Building. and I'm helping Amy out actually in part of this project, and I'm going to be building it. I've done multiple units of this style before. Basically, when we submitted the drawings initially, when we met with the City of Littleton, and we had a design and a proposed structure, our garage was 3 feet off the alley. And we had no predominant setback per CEA code at the time, per instruction to the city. That's what the plans were designed off. Initially, our front first story was 15'6" to 16 feet. Our garage was at 3 feet, and we still had adequate space in the courtyard. But then after resubmittal and comments and reviews came back, we were told there was a setback in the front, which initially there was no setback. And also we needed to provide a turning radius per traffic engineer of the city's requests. Now that meant pushing the garage back because we tried to do it 9 feet, but we couldn't get that adequate space, like you're saying, with the reverse back. I've done units in Denver, and they're always close to the alley. But this is the first time I came across the turning radius. So we tried to push the property back to provide this space. And I will admit, the alley is actually pretty tight back there. And for future reference, it does help probably both parties on both sides. So we tried to accommodate that section of it and keep the open space with the patio, because Amy wants to live there, and for kids, dogs, whatever down the road, to have somewhere safe to play. You still have the turning radius at the back, but then we were caught for space on the front. So between measure and everything, initially there's no setback, but the general rule around that area seems to be a 10-foot setback with a lot of these buildings, and basically that's what we're asking. The front of the building, the first floor, sets back at 15 feet. But as everyone knows, I don't like the design of a building where it's just straight down, plus you want somewhere, it's nice to have somewhere covered, like it's a covered porch, but it's an unenclosed porch. So to your question, it's not actually living space. It's somewhere where you can sit out in a patio chair or a deck chair, but it's unenclosed. There's just railings around, and it's only one step off the ground where that porch is. So it is covered, obviously, but unenclosed, so it doesn't provide any living quarters. And that's basically what we're looking for. So the front of it does set back. So as aesthetics go, the second story protrudes out to the 10 feet, but the first sits back to 15 feet. But to be honest, all of this arose from the parking radius requirement that we didn't know about when we first designed the building. So we're trying to be accommodating with the city and do things what's asked, but still trying to fit what we need in the package of the building. And that's basically where the turning radius, the setbacks, and believe me, I'd love to be built already. But, so yeah, I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out.
Was the original design, when it was at the 15-foot setback, the same design that the porch was covered by the, okay. So
Yeah.
the same design, just pushed back.
Yeah. So everything basically just got moved forward a little bit. Before I tried to take it out, both me and Amy, we tried to take it out of the patio area, but then you're shrinking that up 7 feet. So you end up with 11 to 14 feet, and we tried to keep it at the same in the front, but then we had to start taking pieces off the building. We tried to maneuver it a couple of different ways. So we were looking at shrinking the garage up 5 feet, but then that defeats the purpose of giving you a turning radius. All of a sudden your garage is 5 foot smaller. We tried to take the 5 feet off the patio, same concept. So then we were left taking the building, but a lot of our masters inside, most of the bedrooms upstairs are all en suite. So then the bathrooms don't work. So we're sort of caught, and that's why we're requesting it for the hearing tonight for the 10-foot setback.
Any other questions? I have a question regarding character. Carol spoke to, I think it was fitting the character of downtown. Can you either show us or explain to us how you feel this fits into the character of the downtown and through some of the materials and the design that you're using?
I don't have pictures to go off, but I know there's lots of other new buildings, new structures in the neighborhood. This is modern architecture. I will admit, yeah, it's not a Craftsman style home. It is modern, but the finishes are high end. I deliver a good product. I have websites of different work that we've done before. We're doing a veneer stone finish on the front. We have a stucco band on that second story area. There's cedar siding on the soffit which is, I don't know if you can see it on the elevation, that soffit sticks out about 5 or 6 feet. So it's going to be like a teak finish on that, which ties in very much so with the neighbourhood. I don't do the metal clads that a lot of these newer buildings are doing. I keep away from that kind of stuff. I try and do wood, stucco, stone finish. I think that ties in with most generations of architecture. Yes, the butterfly roofs are a little bit different. They're not Craftsman style. But other than that, our finishes will tie in. The colours are light. They're not going to be obscene. They're not going to spot it from 2 blocks up the street. The landscape, we're putting the grass in, we're putting stones, we're putting in some trees. We're providing areas for the bins to go to the alleys. Other than that, it's all high-end windows, doors, or Marvin, Anderson, both companies we're using at the moment. There's none of the metal facades. Everything is wood.
And do the 2 units look like distinct 2 units, or does it look like one giant building? Are the finishes going to be, kind of differed or like staggered?
It's going to look like one building to look at.
Okay.
It's very clean lines. So you got the stairs, you got the front doors, but you're going to have the same stone veneer pattern running throughout, the same stucco.
So essentially, they're a mirror image of each other.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No other questions? David, do you have a question?
I've been debating whether to say anything here, but I'm just kind of, I don't know if confused is the right word, but it seems to me that, the state of things as they are today, you've got 2 buildings that have been torn down. The now predominant setback is, regardless of when they put in their application, it's less than 15 feet. That's what they were asking for originally. Traffic engineer comes in, says, move it forward. If they were to refile their application, they wouldn't even need a PDO. So I'm not sure I understand, where we're at here.
So I think that's a procedural question that we can, one of the questions I think that is being brought forward, or at least I'm going to bring it forward, and maybe this is also, David, what you're asking here is, I think there's information that's been brought forward this evening that is new to the applicant as well. And is there an option to table this decision to a later date and allow the applicant to continue working with staff based on this new information? Is that an option?
Yes, that's one of your options this evening.
However, this isn't new information. I want to clarify that turning template has been in the plans, and it's been something they've worked with. We're talking at the initial application. At the time of concept meeting, the applicant wasn't aware of the predominant front setback or the need for a turning template and turning radius. It was at the review period that every application goes through that these comments came up during the review comments, and they've been consistent through the application process that the engineering has asked for this predominant front asked for the turning radius and the 12-foot to get into the garage. So it's not new.
Thank you, Carol. I think that's good. I would say the other option you have is if planning board so chooses, you could, as a matter, if you wanted to approve it, move it back 2 feet, the building, shift it all the way back so that the whole thing moves. So then you have that 10 feet off the alley.
What would you want? Do you want 2 more feet on your building with a 10-foot setback? Do you want to move the building back 2 feet? Do you want to leave it as is, or let's go?
I think really we want to get going. So whatever the city wants, we're happy to accommodate.
We're on our third set of plans right now. We've been back and forth. Like, as I say, when we submitted first, there was no front setbacks. Then we're told there is a front setback. So we got that changed. We put in the garage. Now there's a turning radius. We changed it again. So we tried to keep the building the way it was. Like, if you cross the street, the other side of the road, there's commercial buildings there. They sit right up against the sidewalk. There's just a walkway right down on the opposite side of the road, but none of them are taken into account when you do for the medium with both buildings. It's just that side of the block. As it happens, of course, there's a parking lot right beside us. That doesn't count. There's another building right there, and that happens to be 18 feet. And then the building next door to that was approved for the 9 feet, they were already demoed, so they didn't count. The commercial building is right beside that again, which sets up right against the sidewalk. It's 3 feet off the sidewalk, if even. And that doesn't count because I don't know why that doesn't apply, but, or does it count? Yeah, it does. But that's 3 feet. So what we're looking for is not going to change that block in any way, shape or form. Like if you cross the street on the other side of Sycamore, they're all right, they sit right up against the sidewalk again. So it's just very unique that that particular area has the 2 houses that set back to the 16 or 18 feet, the parking lot, the commercial building, the 3 feet, and an empty lot on top of it. So it's...
Well, I think to answer your question, though, the easiest thing in my mind would be to approve the 10-foot setback, just because that's everything that we've now submitted. So if we now move the garage back and the house back, we have to resubmit everything with the city and start over again. So for us, I don't think it really makes a huge difference. I mean, I'm going to live there, whether it's 2 feet in the front or 2 feet in the back. But for simplicity's sake, the 10-foot would be great, and then we can move forward with what we have. Does that answer your question?
You wouldn't want, I don't know that it's a good idea, but you wouldn't want an additional 2 feet to work with in the redesign of the
sure. Yeah, I mean, we would love feet everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I thought you were asking, would we rather have 2 feet and push everything back?
Option 1 is leave it as it is, and you have 12 foot. Option 2 is move it back 10 feet, or 2 feet, and you have 10 foot of a driveway, which meets the traffic person. Or option 3 is we
The 10
approve a
feet and the
variance,
10 feet.
and you add 2 more feet, and then you go back to your design with the guidance to the city.
Like Amy says, we're fine either way. I'm happy I'd be ecstatic if we get to 10 feet and move forward. We tried to do the garage radius at 9 feet before it was turned down. It wasn't adequate because we couldn't provide the turning radius, and we needed the 12 feet to provide the turning radius to get it approved. So then when we got that and provided that arc, did you see with the radius on it, then that was okay. So that's why we were looking for the 10 feet. Believe me, if we could have done it at 8 feet or 10 feet or 6 feet, we would have done it that way. It wasn't our call. We tried to do it that way. As I say, initially it was 3 feet, it went back to 7, it went to 9, and now it's at 12 because that's what we needed to provide the diagram as provided by the city to give a full turning radius. So basically 2 cars could come in the alley and turn into the garage. So hence, that's why we're looking for the 10 feet at the front.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll now, Carol, do you want to respond to anything? Okay. I'll now open it up to public comment.
Sign-up sheet.
Brett's getting it. Thank you. Okay, our first person is Amy Turney. Oh, that's me. Oh, sorry. Emerald Green Building is you. Nick Young, you're in favor of the project. Do you wish to speak? You, no. Greg Sherman is in favor of the project, and welcome.
Good evening. My name is Greg Sherman. I'm the owner of the property at 2217 West Powers, which is directly behind the applicant's proposed site. I am supportive of the project. I was interested in your discussion on the turning radius. Although you say the alley is 12 foot, it only has a 10-foot wide paved surface right now, so it's actually only an 8-foot alley that you can use to turn a car. So I agree with the engineer's assessment that the alley, that the 12-foot turning radius is required at that. We park our corporate vehicles in that lot. I know how very tight it is and difficult it is to get into that alley. This site has also been an eyesore for the last probably 12 to 18 months, I think, and I would like to see it move forward. I appreciate the applicant's demolition and removal of the garbage that was on the site. So with that, I'll just let your time go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan Pearson is in favor of the project. Do you wish to speak? No. Okay. Brad Pearson is in what is it? Peterson, sorry. Brad Peterson, do you wish to speak? Of course.
I had a similar project that I did over on...
You'll have to state your name and your address.
Oh, it's Brad Peterson, 5503 South Prince Street. I had a similar situation.
Speak into the mic, please.
I'm sorry?
Speak into the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's for
I
recording
had a very similar
purposes.
situation, and when I talked to the engineering on a scrape I did over on Prescott Street, and they wanted me to have additional space for the parking to allow more off-street parking for a compact car. So in this case, 12 feet is very close, but it's something to consider. You know, to have another, car off the street, I know parking's an issue in the city, so that might be something you want to consider deeply. That's it.
Thank you. And John Strong is in favor of the project. Would you like to speak? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that hasn't come up? Pam?
My name is Pam Chetburn. I live in a block and a half from here and close to this street. So let me point out, nobody has suggested reducing the size of the residences or just making it one residence. And to me, that fits the character of downtown. We all have spaces around our lots, regardless of what the setbacks requirements are. The character of downtown is homes on lots with space. And to argue that the street is changing and everything's getting closer, so we should make it even closer and tighter and darker and narrower, I think is crazy, and argue that that's still the character of the city. No. This lot maybe isn't big enough for this project. Or it should be a smaller structure because that's the character of downtown. And you know what? People tell me all the time that it's quaint. And so they like these smaller structures. They don't like 3-story, 2 things crowded on a lot. These are the same folks that got CA rezoned and got R5 rezoned because a person bought a property on Nevada, which was R5, thought he could build to the changed CA requirement, and got R5 changed to accommodate the structure he already built. This is the wrong way, planning board, to build a good downtown. Now, I would say, if this was affordable housing, if these folks were contributing to affordable housing for the people who are displaced downtown, who do you think lived in those smaller homes? There are people who were working class, and that's what Littleton is. That's our history. That's what downtown should be. And those are the people displaced by all of these projects now. Brad's on Nevada, Michael's on Nevada. Those folks are all displaced by this housing. What are you doing, planning board? I'm looking at you. What are you doing for housing for these people who are displaced? I think you have an obligation to them. We all do. And yet, here we should try to give them 2 more feet and let them do their 2 luxury houses, upper-class houses on this site. I don't think so. And I think planning board has more work to do to accommodate everyone. When you talk about diversity of housing, what are you doing for the people who are displaced? You've got to maintain that for diversity. Otherwise, we're just doing gentrification. So thanks for thinking about this. I think you ought to... Engineering, by the way, did not require that the building be moved back. They just said 12 feet by the alley. The solution can be a lot of different things, including one structure that's smaller. So I think postponing it and considering it is good, and long-term, we need solutions for affordable housing downtown. Thanks, Planning Board.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Now close the public comment. Any response, if the developer wishes to address any comments that were made for the public, you have a chance to do that now. No? Okay. Okay. All right. So sorry, I just broke this. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve Planning Board Resolution Number 16A-216, approving a planned development overlay for property located at 5586 South Sycamore Street.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Any comments?
I guess my observation is that I think we do have to take into consideration what engineer advises, based on the information provided about the narrowness of the alley, the possibility of development on the lot opposite to the east across the alley, potentially creates concerns if there's fire engines or safety vehicles, these sorts of things that need access, and if engineering is advising 12 feet, I think that needs to be considered seriously. It's very apparent that the developer and owner has responded to numerous requests and is trying to get to some closure or certainty. I think what's proposed is, very reasonable and attractive. There's other properties up and down the street that are much closer. The commercial buildings are much closer than the setback that's being requested. So from my perspective, I think what's being requested is reasonable, and I'm in favor of it.
Anyone else? Mark? No?
My turn. It would be refreshing if someone comes to us someday and asks for a smaller building and conforms to all or most zoning requirements. That's never the case here. Build a smaller building. Last project we approved just north of this lot on Sycamore, I think was for a 10-foot setback.
9.
Was it what?
9.
9 feet?
9.
Most of that, I think it had close to an 18-foot or something setback requirement. They asked for that relief. Most of that was for a one-story front porch. In this case, we're looking at a project with a 10-foot setback with finished space on the second floor projecting over the front porch. So finished floor space is much closer to the street than the last one we approved. I know that the planning board is not an architecture control committee, but I think the form, this form is an awkward example of a very awkward example of the modernist style. But since we're not a control committee, probably let it go. I think engineering, Littleton Engineering is looking at this as a suburban-minded solution. This is actually an urban situation. Setback for the garage in Denver, for instance, forces you to K-turn once or twice to get in the garage. It should be the case here. For me, I would ask for somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 9 feet of setback and move the entire project back in order to keep it a little closer to that 18.5-foot requirement. Those are my comments.
Lynn or Bruce?
In looking, I can't quite see it as clearly as I'd like. In looking at the materials in our last approval, just a couple of lots down, there's absolutely nothing in it regarding the turning requirements. And it appears, as I said, I'm not real clear on this footage, but the garage appears to be closer to the alley. My concern is that I don't have any problem with the porch. If it was just the porch, I wouldn't have an issue. I do have an issue with living space being above that porch. This is a setback from the porch, in my opinion. That's what we're looking at. That's my only real issue with it.
Okay. Bruce, anything from you?
No, I think you go back to the law governing PDOs or PUDs, and I mean, essentially, we're permitting essentially some diversification of use, providing it's in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods, and it's in essence a deal exchanging some flexibility for quality amenities and or something the community would not otherwise get from the developer. Again, we've council has approved subdividing these parcels because they, I think, viewed this as desirable from a community welfare standpoint. In for a penny, in for a pound on the living space over the porch. I respect your comments, Lynn, and Mark's, yours as well. On the other hand, if you do go up and down the block, you do have 3-story apartment buildings and other duplexes that have been in the block south of there that have been tight on their setbacks. You still have the Arapahoe Douglas Mental Health, which is not residential, but is in fact quasi-monolithic, and it's right there, and it's also going to be, you know, tight to the setbacks, right, you know, going up 3 stories straight up. I think they're balancing it out with an interesting design. As Mark said, it's not our place to opine on the architectural preferences per se. I agree with Lynn. It's interesting. We're sort of getting the turning radius issue on this one, but we didn't on the one two lots away, if you will, which, you know, c'est la vie. It's, you know, that's water under the bridge at this point. All in, I think it's beneficial for the community for all the reasons that are in the neighborhood plans and for the desire to support the downtown. And as per the staff memo, people can live, work, and play, and play, work, and live where they work and play where they live, as well as live where they work and play. So I would support it, but I don't have a vote.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So I think there's a couple of things that pop out to me. First of all, the parking as relating to the rest of the downtown neighborhood is consistent with the exact same parking regulations that are all over downtown Littleton. So in terms of architecture of place, it seems to me that it is trying to be an urban or not a suburban, certainly, but something that relates to something we call in our comprehensive plan architecture of place. It is a small, it is an independent, it is a differentiator, it is unique, whether you like it or not. It is a design and architecture that you won't see anywhere else, and that's exactly the type of things that we have asked for. So to that, I favor it. Additionally, it says encourage housing that responds to the changing demands of a local housing market, allowing every generation and income group to call Littleton home and is otherwise consistent with the plan. In our downtown area, we have specifically outlined over and over again, we want to activate this area. We want this to be vibrant. We want this thing to be moving, and this is the kind of architecture that gets us there. So I would tell you that I think this very much, this is exactly where we should head in this particular part of town, and I commend the builder for doing it. So short of wasting time on 2 feet, I'm going to stick with the plan.
I'm struggling with this one, and I didn't necessarily expect to, given some of the information that came forward this evening. So while, you know, the average in, you know, as the code requires us to look at the average, that is what we're looking at determining. Does this PDO allow for this variance in the setback to the 10 feet, despite the fact that the average is higher than that? And even when we consider the new setbacks that have been recently approved, this is still below that average. But yet, our design guidelines say 10 feet, more or less, is okay. So, you know, coming back to what we're approving here is a variance on the setback, and how we get there, a part of that is also our interpretation of does it fit in that neighborhood. And looking at, and I think this was mentioned, looking across the street, looking down the street, a short block down, we do see some of those narrow setbacks. I don't know which way I'll vote on this. I'm still, you know, concerned that we continuously bring the setback shorter and shorter, and what will the next one look like. But right now I need to vote on this one, and I'll consider that. That's where I stand. Okay. No, I'm sorry, you can't. Okay, so are we ready to vote?
Can I add something? Just echoing on your statement that, you look around, what we're talking about is the predominant setback for this block. And I neglected to ask, for a clarification on the language, but we're talking about now 2 buildings, at least one of which is not residential. It is commercial in every sense of the word, or multifamily or something, that mental health building, which is only 13 feet back. If you look at across the street, if you look at behind the next street over, north, south, the setbacks are much lower. If you were to add all those together, I think you would come up with much less than 10 feet, or at least close to 10 feet. And given the back and forth that's been going around along the back of the property, and the rest of the setbacks around in the neighborhood, I'm inclined to think that 10 feet is adequate. Not to mention the fact that on the first floor it's a 15-foot setback, and the second floor overhangs to make it 10 feet. So the whole building still sits back 10 feet from the. It's not like the living area is sticking out further to make it even less. So, like I said, I'm inclined to support that 10-foot setback, just given everything else around it.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Remember, it's going to be a roll call.
I'm sorry.
We're going to do vote by roll call.
Sure. So do you still want us to vote here? Okay.
By name.
All right. Chair Elrod?
I vote yes.
Okay.
I vote yes.
Okay. Chair Pro Tem Rudnicki?
No.
Okay. Board Member Graham?
Yes.
Board Member Bolt?
Yes.
Board Member Miles?
Yes.
Board Member Samuelson?
Yes.
And Board Member Kruger?
No.
All right, the vote is 5-2, so the motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, applicant. And now we'll move on to, where am I? Public comments. Yes. No, sorry. We have another agenda item. It was ordinance to amend Title 10 of the City Code. Staff has requested a postponement to September 26th.
Yeah.
Okay. And now we will, is there anything else on that, Jocelyn? Okay. And now we will move on to public comment for non-agenda items. If anyone would like to come up and speak? Is there another sign-up sheet or? Oh, do I have it? Okay. Pam?
Again, I'm Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. And changing conditions, Andrew, is that people in America are poor. And in Littleton, we have a lot of people with moderate income. That is the changing condition that I expect you to respond to. Not that there is an upper class that's doing better and better and they can afford to exploit our downtown. I expect you to house the people who are here now and the other people who come after, the 40% and growing who can't afford this kind of housing, not even close. So I don't understand why you don't regard that as part of the diversity that's necessary and part of the changing conditions that are needed to be responded to. I hope you do. I hope that dawns on you at some point because it's vital. These are people who need to live too. You want more homeless in America? I don't. That isn't my definition of a great nation. That isn't my definition of a rich nation. That's my definition of a poor nation that lets its people go homeless. So you want more homeless, you want more seniors on the street. You know, women, older women are poor and they can't live on the street. More families are on the street and children. Where is Littleton responding to that need? Those, I know for a fact, I've walked around my downtown neighborhood. I know that these are the people who are displaced by this infill. Planning board, respond to that need, that diversity, that reality of changing conditions. There's far more of those people than there are of the rich who want to do this infill development. Now, I also want to talk about the assisted living and stuff like that. I was just at the open house for the proposed living facility by World Venture, and they are not on the project list yet. There's one 2 doors down. These are both sites that were kind of set up for commercial and are proposing to be residential for elder care. And my understanding is there's actually another one on the other side of the street coming up. So pay attention to that, because there's a ton of people around saying, well, I want to do this because it makes money now. But again, your job is for the long term. Your job is for the next 60 years. Who are the people who's going to be living in this stuff and who can afford it? Really, honestly, this high-end development, we have to get a way to get developers who will build housing for all of us, not just the top 15 or 10%. So thanks for thinking about it. Planning board, please respond to that need.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Okay. All right. So any comments from staff? Jocelyn, anything from you?
No, we'll be talking about our zoning stuff at the study session.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? No. Okay. So we will adjourn our regular meeting. We'll take a 5-minute break to move to the community room for the continuation of a study session on land use code. Thank you.
Good to be here.
So one quick announcement, you'll notice that there were a couple binders next to your space. One's the existing zoning regulations, and one is the draft that we'll be talking about this evening, and you can disregard those at the moment unless you want to just look through them. We will be using them at a little bit further along in the conversation tonight, but it's just for our reference.
David, we are waiting for you, just in case you were trying to sneak in quietly. Thought I'd call you out.
Present.
All right. Okay. It is still September 12th, and we are starting our study session at 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Karina. And I'm going to turn it over to Summer from Clarion to just reset the stage, if you will. I know we've had several conversations about this updated zoning code project, and the update being to Chapter 3, which is the land use table, as well as to reformat the remainder of the existing code to make it more streamlined and easier to use. And with that, I'll turn it over to Summer. But before that, we did have a couple of folks submit written comments, so thank you very much for those. And we can start with that, and then obviously open it up in whatever other questions or comments everyone has. And then we've got some next steps when we get to that. So thanks. Summer, turn to you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Again, I'm Summer Frederick, and I'm with Clarion and Associates. My colleague, Don Elliott, is unable to be here this evening. He is teaching a class on Monday nights this fall, and this is the first one. So unfortunately, this was the one night he could not break away. So I'm going to start by running through, you've seen all of these slides before, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we remember why we're here. So I'm going to do a little project overview, where we are now, and get into what our next steps are. So if you remember, the project overview is to create a modernized, user-friendly ordinance that serves to implement Littleton's existing long-range plans and policies through the update of uses, zoning districts, and development standards, and document reorganization. So that was the major project overview. The project was scaled back and focused on update of uses. Zoning districts and development standards were not touched. And the second part was the reorganization of the existing information into a more user-friendly, accessible document. So, and that's what this says, revise and update lineup of permitted uses, modernize the list, avoid making policy changes that require significant discussion by City Council. And as you know, this group has done a lot of conversation on that point and has put a lot of thought into that new use table and has tried to avoid major policy issues and has created a list which is ever growing with policy issues that you would like City Council to address in the next phase of updating this. And create a logical and intuitive structure which improves the overall ordinance organization and reconciles formatting and structure inconsistencies that exist in the current or old code, as we're calling it, and consolidates similar information that it was sprinkled throughout in various different chapters. So this is our scope of work, and you've seen this before. We are still at task 4, which is prepare public draft of reorganized zoning ordinance and revised use regulations, and that's what all of your hard work has been up to now. Next, when we complete this, will be to introduce the document to City Council. Where we are now, we've had group discussions to talk all about this. The remaining content has been reorganized and the revised information has been incorporated. So these are the new chapters, and the red arrows show you what we worked on and what has been changed. The definitions, majority of the definitions remain the same as they are now. The new definitions address the new uses and the use table. So for next steps, we're going to incorporate the comments and edits from tonight's meeting. And as Jocelyn commented, we did get some written feedback from various different people, and I'm going to touch on some of that right now. One of the issues that a couple people brought up was just what we call quality control edits. Consistency of capitalization, consistency of term use. I understand that planning board may soon change to planning commission. If that happens before this document is ready to be put out for public hearing, we'll make that consistent throughout. Any other changes that may, affect the zoning ordinance or the code, we'll do that as well. And grammar issues as well. Language, and I touched on that, term consistencies, making sure that we're using the same words to mean the same thing throughout the code. I will point out that a lot of that comes from, when we reorganize the information, we simply cut and paste from the old one. So a lot of that comes from what you have in the existing code. So that's where that is now. There were some specific comments about the use information. There were also comments about the document, specific comments about the document on the whole. I'm not going to address the comments that were about anything outside of the use chapter, because that was not part of this project. Does everyone understand that? Get that? Okay. So some of the comments that we brought up, or that people brought up, there might have been some inconsistencies about how the footnotes were being read in relation to the use table. There were some footnotes that said the use has been renamed. So we renamed some of them. One example was for religious facilities. And in the new use table, the line is religious facilities. The footnote indicates that was a name change from the existing churches and church facilities. So sometimes it gets a little confusing when you're trying to read through all those footnotes. What is the new, what is being proposed, what it was changed from. So I just encourage you, if you have some of those questions, to read the footnotes carefully and make sure that you look at the use table for the actual proposed new use line. Let's see, what else do we have here?
I didn't completely follow that. Can you show us an example? Is that one of my questions?
No. So if you look at the use table,
Okay.
and we all flip to our,
Use table
in the new one.
If you're using your paper.
Yes,
it's
you
the
can
one that
use
has
them
this
now.
one. Yeah.
You may use this
And the
now.
use table is chapter 3.
Yep, and it's page,
well,
let's see, and it
starts
starts
on
32. So if you look on page 33, under educational and religious, the lines are other religious facilities and places of worship. And the footnotes say retitled current church facilities and retitled current churches. So these other religious facilities and places of worship now replace church and church facilities to be more inclusive. So, and that is, there are a lot of footnotes in this document, and sometimes that gets a little confusing about which is we're looking at. But the ones that are in the actual table are the ones that we are proposing or to carry forward in this document. There was a question about how, in the table of contents, how the use-specific standards are listed and organized. If you just look at it, they're not in alphabetical order. It looks a little crazy. It follows the use table. So the list of use-specific standards mirrors the list in the use table.
That's
By section, correct. Correct. So that's why if you look down the right-hand column, we haven't made this. This is one of the quality control edits that I'm talking about, standardizing the use-specific standard. Cross-reference. Some of them say have letters. Oh, I guess, did we do that? Okay, so they're all, so the letters in the right-hand column, under use-specific standards, those are in alphabetical order. So dwelling multifamily is A, manufactured is B, group home small is C, group home large is C, and then it goes through the alphabet that way.
I'm sorry, I'm lost again.
So-
Maybe I should follow the hard copy, hold on.
Okay. If you start on page 32, on the use table,
Oh, I see.
Okay, so you were saying,
so the use-specific standards are in the right-hand column. So that's why the list in the table of contents, if you look at the list, and that's on page, starts on page TOC 4.
And 3.3.
Yes. So this list in the table of contents, as it is in the use-specific standards, is organized in the same order as the use table.
so this was one of my comments. I approached this as, I'm looking to do something. I don't know how it's organized in the use table. I'm coming to the table of contents to essentially find what I'm looking for. And I couldn't make sense of where I would find it. And it's a big table of contents. So it's 7 pages. I don't know. I wish there was a better approach because it just hard to navigate for me.
So the problem is that if you put the use-specific standards in alphabetical order in the table of contents, then the use-specific standard cross-references in the use table, it won't be in order.
And I think the other thing is, Karina, the use-specific standards are only when we have specific standards called out for those uses. So it doesn't list all the uses permitted. You would have to go to, if you want to know what you can do, chapter 3, it says use regulations. Either go to page 29 or look down, it says introduction, and then the next thing says permitted use table. You would need to know that you want to go to that table to figure out what you can actually do in that zone district.
So the use-specific standards are another layer on top of the permitted use table. The permitted use table gives you
Everything you can do.
everything you can do, or every place you can do that particular use on that line. And then at the end of the line, and there are additional standards. So I have to flip to the next section and find those additional standards.
So I wonder if we actually need all this detail
In the table of contents.
in the table of contents, yeah.
That's up to you.
I would agree. I think that if we simplified the table of contents and one line on the table of contents at the end said, here's the index, the cross-reference index, and you provided, say, all these things in alphabetical order with the letters next to them, maybe as well as something like in this order, but then having the permitted use table sections with them so that it's easier to navigate from the rear, but the table of contents itself is maybe much simplified and easier to look through. I don't know if that.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
sure. We can certainly do that.
Yeah, I would agree, the same sort of thing. The chapter and section and subsection numbers are appropriate for legal and public hearing purposes perhaps, but in terms of they can be referenced. I'm not sure
Need to call
they
them
really
out.
people need to know it's, 10-2-2.
Okay.
As opposed to chapter 2 zoning districts, subsection 1, subsection 1A.
Okay.
Kind of thing, or point 1, point 1A,
Sure.
point 1A, little 1, whatever.
Okay. We can certainly take a stab at simplifying the table of contents, so it's a little more straightforward.
Yeah.
I think because we've actually got page numbers, that will help.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see. So, moving on.
Do the others.
Okay.
The next one on the list.
Yeah. But I can go through the rest of them.
Yeah.
So there was a concern, there was a comment about, if you look at, about single-family attached duplex and multifamily.
Page?
We're on, I'm 32, I'm sorry, in the use table. And actually Jocelyn and I sat down this afternoon and looked at these three uses and looked at what is existing. And we have come up with, so single family attached will have a use-specific standard now that mirrors what is currently in your Chapter 9, your PDO regulations, where single-family attached will only be allowed in residential districts A1 through R3, I believe is the case, by a PDO. Duplex will be allowed A1 through R3X by PDO only.
So, yeah, and because these are actually in the code right now, just with a different description. So currently in that chapter, I'm sorry.
9.
In the use table,
Oh, the current use table.
the current use table, start with that. Did you write that down? Just for,
So you're going to notate it as permitted?
So there will be a P in the table, in the use table.
Okay.
And there will be a use-specific standard that says that P is qualified by, in those lower density districts, it is only permitted as a PDO.
So that'll be in this last column?
Yes.
so where it says single family or the duplex in the current code right now, it calls it as 2/3 family residence, which is a permitted use in R3X, R4, R5, T and CA. It's permitted in A1 and then the Rs up to R3 as if you pursue a PDO. So we will reflect the use table to that.
Okay, so the line that says dwelling duplex will now have a P across A1 through R5 and T and CA.
Correct.
And there will be a use-specific standard that will speak to the P that's in A1 through R3.
Correct.
So it's basically just mirroring what's in the existing. So we will be getting rid of the duplex title.
Does that mean then the letters A, B, C, C move up?
Yes.
Okay.
Why would we put a P in A1 through R3? Why is that necessary? If someone wants to come in with a PDO, can't they just come in with a PDO?
Well, that's an interesting little quirk of your existing code.
Starting from another one.
So your existing code, the PDO language, says that PDOs allow, your PDO district is essentially a design overlay. It allows you, as you saw this evening, to adjust height, lot size, site performance standards. When it talks about uses, it says the uses that are allowed are those in the underlying district, those permitted uses in the underlying district. Your chart right now, so when you interpret zoning language, when it says a permitted use, that is usually a use that is permitted by right, unless it's qualified otherwise. So your PDO language says all of the underlying district's permitted uses. Your chart has these uses indicated as only allowed by a PDO. That is not a by right use.
But we're not going to change it.
We're
It's
not
in the
changing
existing
it.
code. So what we're doing for the moment, because that's a different conversation about
Yes.
zoning districts and uses, this is really about just modernizing and updating our terms in the use table. So we will be using what we have today. So the term duplex will not be brought forward. It will say, which is what it says right now, 2/3 family residences, which are permitted in, so it reflects exactly what it is today, in R3X, R4, R5, T, and CA. And it will sit, the table will be reflected to say in the A1, the RS, the RL, the RE, and then the 1 to 3, it will be only allowed through a PDO. That's what the code says today. We will keep that.
And so to keep the current standards as they exist now, using what we have proposed in the new use table, that's why we're using Ps with the use-specific standard.
So it's allowed if you bring forward through a PDO. So it will be P with an asterisk and it say only through a PDO.
Well, it'll have a use-specific
Well,
standard.
use specific standard, yeah.
So the regulations you have right now will be carried forward using this new format.
And with the same language, nothing will be changing on the language.
Right.
About the single family
Right. So single-family attached is currently in our code as a townhouse. So we've just renamed it to be more appropriate, right?
Townhouse or a row house.
Or row house,
So
right.
it's,
So they're permitted in every one of those zones.
They are permitted for townhouse, which is 4 or more units, would be in R4, R5, T, and CA, and through a PDO. As long as you do a PDO, you can do it in A1, RS, RL.
Similar to the duplex. then.
yes.
Yes.
That's what you're saying. It's
Yes.
replicating what we just talked about, the duplex. Single family attached, you have to do a PDO also.
So,
It's in R A1 through R3.
yes. So some of the confusion here was created by us because we read your PDO as underlying permitted districts. And we read that as these uses were meant they were by right. Jocelyn has now educated me that that is not the case. And so we need to go back and add these use-specific standards so that it reflects what you currently have.
So what is the difference between dwelling, single-family attached, and dwelling, whatever the new name is going to be?
2 and 3.
2 and 3
So
families. What would be the why do we need 2 of those if they are the
the size difference.
size?
The size difference and currently the townhouse, which is going to the single-family attached term, it requires a PDO and also in the R3X, whereas the 2/3 family residence is a permitted use in the R3X.
And the existing definitions are also different.
Right.
So your existing definition for a townhouse is a row house. It specifies that they are horizontally connected by common party walls with the front and rear wall being open for access. So that is the only product, housing product, that is associated with single-family attached.
So apart from the proposal to change what the table is going to look like, what are the new names going to be now for those 2?
single-family attached.
So that's going to remain even though it's a row house?
Right,
Multi-
and so just to clarify, so that is replacing what is currently in the code as townhouse.
Townhouse.
Okay.
So
And
that's
then
more
the other
modern.
one?
Dwelling, two or three family attached.
Which is what's currently in the code, and we're going to keep that
Yes.
instead of duplex.
And dwelling multifamily.
And we go back to the first one, dwelling, single-family detached. There's no change there.
No.
Is there a change to dwelling multifamily?
No,
Where does condo come into this?
that would be a dwelling. Ownership is not addressed in the definitions.
Okay.
So it'd be multifamily,
Well, it could be.
It could be.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So to signify that they need a PDO, you're not going to use P with an asterisk? What are you going to use? A Q, X, Y, Z? What are you going to do?
Just a P, and then there will be a use-specific standard in the right-hand column. And you'll have to flip to the use-specific standard section, and that's where it will say you can only do it by PDO.
Why don't you make it clear in the table itself that it requires a PDO by giving it a different letter?
Because then we would have to change if you're gonna get to that level of differentiation in the table, a lot of these, you'd have to come up with a lot of different letters combination, because then you'd have, for the conditional uses, you'd have to differentiate that it's conditional because of use regulations or administration regulations or the rest of it.
The danger I could see is typical architect just goes in, sees, oh, P. He doesn't go to the right-hand side and see specific use standards. He goes merrily on and gets tripped.
Well, if you look at the beginning of this section, under C, there's an explanation on use-specific standards. And so just flip back to page 30. And it tells you that it may say P, but if there is something in that right-hand column, you better go look and see what the other standards are. Architects look at this and they know there are other standards in the code they have to look at. They know there's parking, they know there's lighting. So the fact that there are additional layers of requirements for their development is not new for a developer.
And so, so this requiring a PDO, is that the only thing that is a use-specific standard, or is it requiring a PDO subject to something else? So there must be other things in
So the use-specific standard will refer back to,
Chapter 9?
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've got it may very well be a nit question, but I guess I was going to ask if you've got these things defined as permitted, conditional, accessory, or temporary. You've got on page 34 under restaurant a V as in Victor, but that's not obvious in here as.
That shouldn't be there. We took those out.
Oh, cool.
That's a typo.
That's a typo. Good catch. Thank you.
Yeah, it's what I live for.
Okay, so is everyone confused enough that we can move on to the next topic? In all seriousness, is there more discussion that's needed? Yeah.
This may not be something you want to do. These things are described, again, the P, C, A, and T are described in here. Would it be helpful to someone who isn't as familiar or doesn't use these tables frequently to maybe just have one line under the table that says P equals permitted, C equals conditional, so forth and so on, under each of the tables, just so they don't, and then you can put in there C page 29 for definitions or something.
Sure.
Yeah, like a
Again,
footnote.
sort of, zoning code 101 kind of stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
And what we would do is we would add that underneath the header And so
Yeah.
it would repeat at the top of each page.
That'd be great, yeah.
Okay. Is there more discussion that's needed?
I'm still scared.
Well, I think, Mark, to answer your question, I think that having it all on the same page, if you will be much more user-friendly than it is right now, because right now you have to go, oh, what is that letter, and where do I find what my letter is as to what I can do? Because right now you have to go, oh, it's an O. Well, where do I find an O, and what does that mean?
Grant you that, it's much clearer there. It's just, I'm going to go and see what's available in R1, and I see a P for townhome or something. And, oops, I didn't go to the right-hand side, but it's buyer beware, I understand, but.
It would have it all right there versus, oh, it
Yeah,
looks like
all
it's
right there,
allowed.
but it's still, you got to slide over. Once you get used to it, it's fine.
Yeah,
The
it's gonna be
first timer
changed.
could get confused, start designing a duplex and then get tripped up 3 months down the road.
Well, we actually think it'll be easier because people get tripped up right now because it's not in one location. So at least you go to the use table, you can figure out, oh, it's a permitted or whatever use, and then, oh, look, I've got to check this other footnote out to find out what else I need to do. Right now, you don't know what an O is, and oftentimes people go, oh, that must mean it's permitted.
It's different, and
but
certainly,
it's different.
I will say, certainly, with any zoning code out there, there are many places that for people who don't use this every day or aren't even as familiar with it as you are as a group, they get tripped up, and zoning is not intuitive by any means. That's why geeks like me do it every day. But, it's none of this is intuitive. And so our goal is to try and put as much information in one place so it's as readily accessible by someone coming in off the street as this kind of information possibly is. And I understand, Mark, your concern is a valid one. This is the best way we have come up with to address someone coming in and saying, what can I do with my piece of property?
To put an asterisk or something there, just something to qualify the P.
I understand, but in order for the structure that we have set, but without falling down a rabbit hole of trying to specify what each letter means in each permitted cell, again, this is the best that we've come up with. So.
And so, to be clear, there actually won't be any footnotes.
Correct.
And the only thing that will give you an indication that there's more information that you need to pursue will be this right-hand column, which says use-specific standard.
Correct.
Somewhere, if I'm searching this online, will I be able to click on that, your specific standard?
Yes.
Will it take it to me?
Well,
That page?
that's the idea. I don't know what the city's capability is, but that's the idea. So if it's a Word document, these are field codes. So that's what you hover over it with the mouse, control, click, and it takes you there. That make sense? Okay. You okay with that?
Is that better?
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. We talked about those. There was a question regarding accessory uses, and does every accessory use need a permitted use? And the answer is yes. So all accessory uses are subordinate to a permitted use. So if a cell has an A in it, for instance, first one I come across is beekeeping. So right now, beekeeping, it's on page 34 in the table. Beekeeping has a P in A1, R5, RL. That means that beekeeping can be used on a lot as the only use for that property. When you go to RE, it has an A. That means there has to be an approved use, primary use, a single-family dwelling unit before beekeeping is allowed on that property. So one cannot, so if there is an A in the cell, that means that there has to be some other use that is a primary use on that piece of property. Does that answer your question? Okay. Everybody understand that? Okay. Then, let's see, there was some comments about, let's see, there were some comments about the construction of the use table and where different uses fall, and headings of uses. So I'll just go over the ones that were brought up. In group living, there was a proposal to move child or adult daycare center to group living.
Where is that?
Child and adult daycare center is currently under community and culture. The difference is that group living, anything in residential is for overnight. People live there. So child or adult daycare center is just for daycare. It is not an overnight facility. So that's why it's not.
Well, there's different requirements by the federal government also.
Right, well, but we have.
Keep them separate.
Correct. So we do have group home small and group home large. Group home small, we create, if you remember the conversation, we created that to address HUD's Fair Housing Act.
But it doesn't, my point is, it doesn't fit in community and cultural.
It's a community, so the idea is it's a community resource. So an adult daycare
Private
center.
facility.
It may be a private facility, it may be a facility run by the city, it may be a facility run by the state.
Still for community access.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it wherever you think, but this is typically where we find this type of use.
I'm the one that made that comment. I made several comments on the order. It was just, I was trying to be intuitive, again, not being, a professional or, in code on a daily basis, just trying to be that outside person coming in and, where did things intuitively fit? And that's where my recommendations came in. And so what you're saying is that child or adult daycare centers do not belong in group living and care because group living and care is for overnight only. So why do you use the word care? Why not just group living?
It's not care, you added care.
Oh. Okay. Sorry, I didn't
No,
get the color
it's okay.
coded.
No worries. Then it was suggested to move park, trail, and open space and hospital, which are currently in the other category, up to cultural.
Community and cultural.
Community and cultural.
Sorry, what page are you on?
Still on 33. So under other, park, trail, or open space, and hospital, move them up to community and cultural.
That was me again.
I'm happy to do that. That one is a little more gray area for use tables. Is there a general idea, a general thought about keeping them, moving them?
I think moving them is appropriate. It puts it under a central heading, which is community.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Certainly do that. Another suggestion was monastery or convent and sorority and fraternity house. Move those from group living to educational and religious. And that gets back to a monastery, a convent, a fraternity, or a sorority house are places where people live.
Right.
So they are considered residences. They have a specific, what's the word I'm looking, not audience.
So people live in colleges. But we have colleges under education.
Correct, but a college is more than just, a college is an educational institution.
That has somewhere to live
That-
versus,
Living is no way in a college.
Nobody lives at ACC though.
So living at an educational institution is not the primary, is usually not the primary purpose of that land use. It does get into splitting hairs.
yeah, I'm fine with leaving this one where you had it. I mean, my reasoning for putting it under education and religious is, again, I'll use sorority and fraternity house. A sorority and fraternity house, I don't believe exists unless it's near a college campus, right? You don't have one in the middle of nowhere if it's not associated with a college. So to me, it's somewhat of an extension of the college.
Well, I'll tell you
They're
this,
separately owned. It's not usually part of the college.
No, that's not on the college property, I get that, but.
and they're usually privately owned.
Right.
And they're usually houses that at some point have the potential to become, usually were a residence.
Oh, so they can change the
Yes.
use and still group
And
living.
it's not, and it's about the actual use.
And the college has no governance over how it's utilized.
Again, I'm, that one I can kind of give on. Again, my approach to this was, where would I look for this?
Right. Understandable.
And that's subjective, I guess.
By the way, when you get done with all the footnotes, you're not going to be splitting it up like you've got industrial going from one page spilling over to the next page.
When you take out all these footnotes.
But when you take the footnotes out, it's all going to be, you're
A little bit
This-
easier to find.
not going to split that
Yeah,
use.
this table reduces down to, I think it might be 2.5 pages. But it
But
reduces.
don't split it so that,
Yeah,
so that you go from industrial on one page and you got to go up to the next page or
Correct.
flip. Okay.
yeah. Nope, we do hard page returns at that, hard page breaks for that. The last suggestion was to move correctional facility and medical marijuana to the other category. So correctional facility is currently under community and cultural, and medical marijuana is currently in retail sales and personal service. So medical marijuana is, you have to have a prescription, but it's the same thing as a pharmacy. It is a retail sale.
I don't think it's not a pharmacy.
But it's not.
Well,
It's retail sale.
it's retail sale,
Because it's
but
collected.
right, it's a pharmacy in terms of you have to have a prescription and you go in and you buy something from a pharmacist. It's not, or
From the
Your dealer.
dispensary, a dispensary,
dispensary.
right.
A correctional
actual land
institution,
use.
though, could go there.
I'm sorry?
Correctional institution could be moved to other.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Where's,
Hang out with the
where's
detox center.
recreational marijuana?
We don't have it.
It's not in the code.
It's in
It's
Inglewood.
elsewhere.
Denver.
It's elsewhere.
We were putting
Well, I was just
correctional
thinking-
facility and marijuana.
Can you put them in the same
What are you
building?
trying to say?
Yeah,
But medical marijuana is not a retail sale.
Yes, it is.
it is.
Just like going to your pharmacist and buying a prescription.
It is.
So this is the category that you referred to as general merchandise when we talked.
General retail sales, yes.
Because they don't sell just the marijuana.
I mean, some of them have,
There's also a tattoo
they have other
parlor.
merchandise, T-shirts and stuff. I mean, the one on Main Street.
Fruitaments.
Yeah, right, appurtenances.
Appurtenances, there we go.
That's twice in one meeting. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But then
You know what?
notice, but then see, there's, so on the marijuana one, so it's under retail sales. And then if you go all the way over, there's also use-specific standards, and then that's where the code then references you back to the chapter 20 of the city code that has all the other specific requirements for that particular use.
Distance from schools and that type of thing.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And applications and how you get approval.
So Jocelyn, I had a follow-up question that you and I talked about.
Yes.
If you could find, you were going to find where it defines it as general merchandise?
Yes, so it does not, but it is considered retail sales. So because that's the use category, that's why it's being shown here.
Is that the type of tax license or permit license that they
Yeah.
get?
Correct. But it doesn't specifically say that in Chapter 20, but it is a use as a retail sales. That's how the city defines it.
And I'm fine to talk about that, because I know it was a policy, potentially a policy question, so I think it's unrelated to this. My question
Yes.
to you was a
Yeah,
policy question.
yeah. And just so you know, so Karina had a question about should, we're going to leave it, the medical marijuana, where it's shown right now, but is this perhaps a bigger policy question that we want to bring to council of, do we like this being an allowed use where you can have retail sales? And if you guys like that, we'll just add it to the list of items, the long list that is growing of, bringing it to council to talk about where medical marijuana is allowed in the city.
Has council addressed this at all as far as limiting the numbers of
Yes,
dispensaries and
That's
such?
everything that's in
So-
Chapter 20 right now.
Yeah, so currently you can have no more than 4. It is allowed where you can do retail sales, and then there are several distance requirements from schools and parks and others. Yeah, yes.
And you do need somebody said sales tax license.
Correct.
You have to have a sales tax license, and that's how they control the 4.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
that we're permitted.
And you go through the licensing authority for
And
approval.
There were some grandfathering issues. If one of them leaves,
Correct.
I don't remember the
There's,
specifics.
I think there's 4 total, and I don't remember all the specifics, but 2 of them are grandfathered in, and should those 2
They have to go somewhere.
vacate, then you'd have to find a different location.
That's right.
So part of the reason why I want to bring this up as a policy question was, right now, we're putting them in as permitted where they exist now. But, the question I brought forward is, given some of the limitations came in afterwards and some are grandfathered in the future, is this where we would want to permit medical marijuana, seeing that it's actually quite limited and is, again, it's grandfathered in, but it's, should we consider industrial, or should we consider another area?
Well, I think, the whatever the use-specific standards, I think this is more or less the same issue as the PDO item for residential we talked about, or duplexes, because whatever's in R here, if it's, the code has all of the restrictions in terms of where they can locate, and when you apply those restrictions to a city map, you find there's, a half dozen spots that they potentially could exist. Presumably, those are in these, land use sections, the B1 through 3 and the IP, I1 and I2. But they may, in any given, I guess generally they could exist in a in a B2, for example. But in all probability, most of the B2s would be precluded because of the use-specific standards of not within so many feet of a park, not within so many feet of a residential, not within so many feet of a school or a church or whatever. And that really constrained, it's not all B2s, it's just some B2s, for example.
So it sounds like this is worthy of putting on the policy list, policy discussion list.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay. One more, there was a question about the use-specific standard for parking lots and parking garages, which is AA, which is on page 53. So it's AA1A. Only a surface parking lot, not a parking garage, is permitted. And this is a standard that is applied to primary use parking in residential and T districts. The footnote says that this combines the standards, no, I'm sorry, new provision to carry out intent of regulations, current regulations. So what the current regulations say are that parking garages are not allowed in residential districts. So we reworded that current regulation to say that only surface parking lot, not a parking garage, is permitted in residential and T districts.
Why don't you just say parking garages are not permitted in residential districts, period, end of story?
We can do that.
I mean,
It's just sure, this is just a code, the way we wrote it, and if we can say parking garages are prohibited.
You've got a problem with that when you combine residential with commercial use.
But this is referencing, there's, in the conditional use section of the code, there is off-site parking. So off-site parking for commercial uses is permitted with various conditions. So this is referencing what's for that particular instance, not in general.
Okay.
Give me the page in the use table where it comes up.
It's automobile parking. So
It would be.
I think I heard someone say 36, and that sounds right.
Just go to the table of contents.
Automobile parking facility.
I got a question. Would you say the R, it's just residential, to say R districts? Would that be better to say that? For the,
Residential or T districts?
uh,
I think residential is more, I'm happy
So
to.
never mind.
Okay.
Forget
Yeah, my question would be, the way multifamily residential is constructed today, oftentimes, it's not a surface parking lot. It is a parking garage wrapped with residential units. That happens throughout the country, throughout the metro area. It's podium-style construction. So you've got multifamily units surrounding a parking structure. So I think that that's problematic from what is being discussed here. That says you don't have to have multifamily with an at-grade parking lot. That's what you don't want. Clearly don't want that. RC, I think that that would be something that you would know a lot about.
So that would be a change to what you
I just think
currently
it's
have.
problematic. If you get into higher density multifamily, 3 or 4 story podium
Sure.
construction, you're going to have a parking structure. You're not going to have at-grade parking.
You're going to have it through the code.
So.
Sorry?
Okay, clarification. This is for primary use parking. So this is as standalone
I know,
parking.
that becomes then an accessory to the primary use, which is residential.
But parking garages are only prohibited as a primary use in the residential districts.
So this is just the
Parking garage,
going in and building a garage.
correct.
By
And then-
itself.
Yes. That's what this standard
Okay,
says.
so it's a
use parking.
is a primary use.
Yes, you cannot have a garage in a residential district. You can have a parking lot, but you can't have a parking garage. So the idea is you don't want to have, I'm assuming the intent of this regulation that, as it was written, is you don't want to have just a parking garage on a lot next to residential uses.
Isn't there also a requirement that if you have a parking lot in a residential use, it has to be adjacent to the commercial property?
Yes.
Yes.
Parking lot must be
Yes.
located to adjacent.
So you couldn't put a parking lot in the middle of a block
Correct,
for
It's a commercial
property.
venture.
correct. Does that, you have a good point, but does this clarify why this regulation is in here now? Yes?
So-so.
Okay. Whether or not it's a good regulation is a different conversation. Okay. So those were addressing the comments that we received in writing. Does anybody have any, and this, again, is just on the use section, not on the remainder of the document. Yes, Carol.
Somewhere on page 47, under the all medical marijuana centers must comply with the requirements of Chapter 20. Can we put in what document Chapter 20 belongs to?
Sure.
What page are you on?
47.
Why would you just put that in here?
Yeah, I'm looking at it, if I'm looking at this and not familiar, I would say Chapter 20 of what?
Of the city
Where to
code.
find it.
Yeah,
Yes.
but could that be part of our?
Of chapter 20, you want to put chapter 20 in,
Oh, no, just,
but I'm asking, is that what you're asking?
you want the whole thing?
Chapter 20 is very long.
Okay. Then,
But I
yeah,
agree,
then a reference
clarify
to
where it is.
Yeah.
Hyperlink.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
but the clarification, that's a
Yes.
good point.
Yeah, no, that is good.
Okay,
So Summer, I had some additional comments.
okay.
I'm trying to find them on here. So 10-3-3, use-specific standards.
Okay.
And I said, can we add an intro definition on how to use this use-specific standards? Why are they listed?
What
Use-
page are you on?
Trying to find it. So 10-3.
So it's not,
Anybody wants to say anything about anything, state the page that's on page.
I'm trying to find it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what your comment was, is that what is in section?
Page
C?
38. Right? Where the
Yeah,
start of
so
the
here it
use-specific
goes.
standards.
So on page 38, 10-3-3 says use-specific standards, and then it jumps right into the use-specific standards. And what I was asking for is like a brief paragraph to introduce this section and talk about what it is, how you're going to use it, et cetera. They have done something similar in 10-3-2, where they introduce the section, applicability.
Which is on page 30.
Which is on page 29.
But 30 is where use-specific requirements start and talks about what that is.
If you go to page 30, C is exactly what you're asking for.
I guess I would want to see it here, or maybe a,
So in 10-3-3 on page 38, under use-specific standards, you want something that talks about applicability?
No, no. She's talking about what's in
On page
C.
30,
On page 30,
C1, use-specific
C1.
standards.
the information on what use-specific standards are, how to use them, where to find them on the table. And then, so I'm happy to put in a brief on page 38, a sentence that says,
Refer to.
please see 10-3-2 for specifics for use, or some sort of introduction,
I see what
couple of sentences that say, these use-specific standards are those that are referenced in the permitted use table. For specifics on
Yeah.
how to use them, refer to 10-3-2, C1.
It makes it easier for you to move around the document. That's what you're saying,
yeah,
right, Katrina?
yeah.
Okay,
And again, it might feel better once all the footnotes are out, and it's kind of like it's only 2
Yeah.
pages away, but.
yeah. Nope,
Page 53, let's see what I said on page 53. Oh, I think you explained this one. AA footnote 225. Oh, you explained that one? 10-3-3, page 61.
What page are you on now?
I'm going to page 61. And I have a comment on KK, home occupations footnote 244. Can you explain or reconcile why these should also be permitted on residential uses? What was KK? Home footnote 244. So my comment was footnote 244 states, Current 10-4-5 reordered and reworded for clarity and with changes as noted, revised to delete reference to residential districts, since these should also be permitted. So my question was, are they already permitted, or is this a change? Because it's saying should.
So home occupation is permitted in the residential zone districts currently. So we talked about just making sure, I'm not sure what that footnote says necessarily, but at the moment, home occupations are permitted in the residential zone district. And so we wanted to say that.
This talks about a residential use in a mixed-use project, so if it's
Right.
predominantly commercial with some residential, you'd want to allow the home occupation.
So the should comes from if our standard through our work, if a home occupation is allowed in residential districts, it's also allowed in the residential uses of mixed use.
But currently our code doesn't do that, so we're not going to change to that. Maybe that's another future conversation, but we're going to make sure that it meets what the code currently says.
The language that you see right now, we need to edit it. Again, this was another education point for me from Jocelyn today, that apparently there have been some issues with home occupation and mixed-use projects and the legalities of such. And so we need to go get some specific input from your legal.
Well, we're just gonna revise it to say that home occupations are only permitted in residential zone district, which is what the code says today.
Right.
I think anything above that really does qualify for that bigger conversation, so.
So you'll
Yep.
add that to the policy list?
Yep, so basically it'll just say that it's permitted in residential zone districts versus all zone districts.
Yep.
So that would mean that if you had a mixed-use zone district downtown where there's residential, and like the Valley Feed site, you couldn't have a home occupation?
Correct.
Is that
That's
what you
currently-
want?
That is currently what the code says.
But is that what we want?
That's why it's
Not
a policy
necessarily.
question.
So I think that the question, what we're saying is that's a bigger change than what we've been looking at in this rewrite.
Right.
And so that,
Okay.
I'm not giving an answer yes or no, I'm saying that warrants a question.
Move it to some
Yes.
further discussion.
Yeah, to a bigger policy
As one of the more
conversation.
controversial items.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, I understand what you're
That's
saying.
what I'm saying.
Okay.
Keep it currently as the code says right now, which is allowed in residential for home occupation.
Okay.
How long are we going to be looking at a document like this with footnotes?
The next one you see, I think, won't have footnotes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of the footnotes is just going to help us where things were in the old document.
No, I was just going to say, because we should delete after the word since if we're going to keep.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah, we'll clean that up as well.
Yeah.
I have a general question.
Sure.
Because there are just a slew of footnotes
Yep.
all over the place. When the draft goes to public hearing, will the footnotes still be there, or are you planning on removing the footnotes?
But the footnotes eventually just become our history of record, if you will. So once we go forward, which we have a few steps before we get to that, but once we get to that point where it's ready to be reviewed and potentially adopted, then it'll just be the clean document of what we want to propose.
Okay, so there'd be no footnotes when it went to a public hearing because it would be the clean document?
Right, but we'll still keep that
No, I
as
understand
reference,
that.
but yes.
As a working
Correct,
tool?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Carol.
Summer, does anybody ever put something in their code that tells somebody who's really unfamiliar with the process, here's how to use this document?
Not in the actual document. But yes, localities do that all the time. Typically, it's when they put it online, there's a whole tab, how to use the zoning ordinance software. And that explains where you go for information, how to click on cross-references, and that type of information. That is usually then, especially in the beginning, right after adoption, that is usually printed out and hard copies are kept everywhere with staff, with a front desk, when someone asks for the code, usually localities charge for hard copies, but that gets published with it. But it's not part of the actual adopted legal document.
Okay, so this goes step 1, step 2, step 3.
Yes, there are a lot of different ways to do it, and localities usually know their community and tailor it to what they think. And frankly, the other thing a lot of people do is they have one-pagers for various different activities. If you want a subdivision application, this is one page, what you have to do, where you have to go, with code references. If you're coming in, if you have a piece of property and you want to know what you can do with it, this is the process. This is the most straightforward process. And there's usually a qualifier somewhere on that page that says, please contact staff before you move forward with any sort of development if you are unsure.
It's like an individualized user guide.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have one more. Footnote 55, page 32. And footnote 55 is attached to the new title called Mixed Use.
Okay.
And it says, retitled from commercial and business because these districts should permit residential uses. So my question is, do these districts permit residential uses now?
Yes.
All of these, BP through CA.
What page was that again?
Page 32.
He is multifamily,
In the Bs, yes, but let me look on the BP. I don't know. Hold on. Only because I know it's somewhere else in this code.
It's
So
not in BP.
all but BP.
So, let's see. Where is it? Not in BP. In T, yes. T is correct. And then B1, and B2, and then I gotta look at B3. So, not in BP and not in B3.
So not in BP and not in B3?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you
we'll
want to
make
address
those-
this?
We'll take out those Ps.
And then isn't it a misnomer to call this whole section a mixed use if there's two that do not fit that description?
I'm not sure what a better title would be, because it would also be a misnomer to call it commercial and business, because residential is also allowed. You can call it commercial business and residential.
About mix of uses.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer now either, it's just,
We'll look into it. Yeah. We'll think about it. does anyone else have comments?
Just a general one.
Yeah?
We're looking at the use tables and this use-specific tables, definitions, I suppose you could call it. The other chapters, you've had some slight changes to conform to these two chapters that we've been looking at, but most of it is just verbatim out of the old code. The question I have is, has staff done an editing to make sure, inadvertently you didn't do a must to may or a the to, or something that could radically change something, because we don't have time to edit.
Right. No, absolutely good. And this is kind of to the next point of sort of the next step, but calling it quality QC. So staff is starting to go through from page 1 and comparing, all of this to make sure that in the use table, for example, we just caught a couple things, but to make sure there are no other things that need to be fixed. So we're calling it QC, to make sure that it is exactly what we have been talking about and not a change. Correct.
Something changed and we didn't know about it, and oops, down the road we get stung.
Yep.
So the other thing that I will say, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, is when a locality adopts any new regulation, any new zoning ordinance, they usually build in, so there's an adoption date, and then there is a sort of kickoff date or an implementation date. And there's usually some amount of time where the old code is still being used. So basically, they're both legal documents, but that time, whether it's a month, 2 months, 6 months, gives everyone time to look at more closely, look at the newly adopted document and figure out, is this what we really said it was? Are there any glitches? Did we somehow inadvertently delete line 12 from page 104? And so the new code is there and it's been adopted, but there is that time period for and staff can start using it when an application comes in. They can use the new code and review it and get used to it. But while they already know the old code, so that time period is usually built into that. And with that, there's usually a provision if any editing needs to happen because we left out a word, we deleted line 12, things like that, that staff is empowered to go ahead and do that. So that's something that you can talk about once you get to that final end. So, in light of time, because we do have some fun for you today, just quickly, I'm going to run through this quickly. If you have other comments or you come up with anything, feel free to send them to Jocelyn and she'll pass them on to me and we'll try and address them as we can.
And so what will, so I don't know how much time you're going to be going. I mean, that timeline of it's 2 weeks, it's 2 months, I'm not sure. What is going to be the next step? Going to community? Oh,
perfect.
Well, there you go.
So we'll incorporate comments that came out of tonight's conversation. We'll do those quality control edits that we talked about, capitalization, term, consistency.
Which is also staff looking at it in detail.
Yeah. And then Planning Board and Zoning Steering Committee, this group, will present the reorganized document to City Council for review.
It's study session.
At a study session, at a work session.
And right now, I believe tentatively, based on their schedule and how busy it is, November 8th is the tentative time, and I'll confirm that with everyone as soon as I can.
That's a study session?
Correct, yep.
A joint work session.
Joint work session, yep.
And then after it goes to City Council, the idea is that staff will then schedule public open houses to solicit feedback from the community. And now we have a zoning test for you. And this is why you have 2 books. And we will make this
super quick
because the time is late. But just to kind of give you a preview of what we are intending to happen at those public meetings or those public open houses, we're going to do this quick. So this is finding the answer. You want to run with it?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. So so we're going to be talking about the Littleton Center as our test site. So here's a picture. So the first question for you guys is, in our existing code book, which is Title 10, here, this book, the question is, can the Littleton Center, which is zoned CA, can the use be converted into a car dealership? Is it a permitted use?
Ask the question again, please.
Sure. So the Littleton Center is in CA, and can we turn it into a car dealership?
An application has come in
Or,
to turn
yeah.
Littleton Center into a car dealership, and staff has to determine whether or not that is acceptable.
So I'll give you a hint, because you'll notice there are no page numbers. First of all.
Nor is there a good table of contents.
Right. So it's in Chapter 3. So tab 3 is Chapter 3, which is your land use table.
Either.
So not a,
The answer is, I don't know.
What is making you say that, Mark?
We say, okay, we have the CA zoning district, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Change it to a used car.
Just a
change
car
the-
dealership. Or
Change the
any-
use
Yep.
to a used car deal. I'm looking at the use table and sales, leasing, rental, or pawning of used motor vehicles. In the CA, it says nothing. It's an empty square.
No.
correct.
Correct. So the answer is no.
But on the other hand, the old ordinance says,
Uh-oh.
Central Area Multi-Use District defines the downtown business district as the city and promotes a mix of residential, retail, service, office, amusement, and associated commercial and business uses.
But this particular commercial use is not allowed.
There's nothing here that says it isn't.
I know, so
The use
that's why you
table.
need to know to go to the use table. So
Yeah.
good point. Yes,
Yeah.
to your point. No page numbers and you don't know that.
It tells you to go to the use table.
There you go.
Land uses, see section.
Okay.
So you can park an entire fleet of city vehicles here, but you can't have a car dealership.
Exactly.
It's when you have the auction for them that's the problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you were to look that up in our newly revised code,
Yes.
let's see how,
Which I think
what
Hank
page,
has
what
already
page is it
done.
on?
So the question is the same, but use the new document.
This is what I did to my family, you know that, don't you?
Page 36.
It is not permitted.
It's blank on page
36.
36.
Nice
Same
job.
answer.
Same
Same
answer.
answer.
But much quicker to find.
Just go straight to a table.
Yeah.
Mainly because
And it gives you everything, like if there's any use standards or anything.
There's something the city's not telling us?
No, no. It was just easy. I had a map of here.
or you could put a gas station.
Well, so the next one, so they can't do a car dealership. They come in and they want to change it to a residential multifamily development of 50 units.
Are we looking at the older than the?
So I'm looking at the old.
BDO.
So if you look at the old,
So it's CA.
How many?
4 units or
A multifamily, the number probably doesn't matter. Let's just say 50.
apparently.
So we'll say townhomes.
It says it's permitted.
Yep, it's permitted.
Yep.
Okay, so good, you got
Okay.
that.
So the next question is, using the old code, what is the density allowed?
on that property.
Or where would you go to find it?
CA,
How many acres is that?
Yeah, it's just where do you go to find it?
Ten -2-18.
Yes, yep.
No, B2.
Yeah, 25,000 square foot.
575,000.
There's somewhere
500
else.
square feet.
Where did he end up?
It's
55.
in 10 to 18.
575.
575 square feet per unit.
575 per unit.
For multifamily. But a townhouse can be sold individually.
But it says the parcel shall be no less than 25,000 square foot. So, I don't know how big this parcel is.
That means you can't develop a parcel less than 25,000 square.
And then this is where you would come for your, the setbacks and the height. And then, what would the parking requirement be? That is kind of a trick question.
1 car per unit.
The 10-4-4?
You have to know to go to 10, chapter 4, dash 9. You just have to kind of know that.
It doesn't tell me to go there.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, we're telling you to go to
Yeah.
10-4-9.
And then it's several pages through to find the multifamily would be, oh, it's not on, there's no page number. So it's number 4. What is it? A4.
That's interesting in that there's no reference to parking in A.
So should there be?
Well, there isn't, so.
Okay.
But yes, there should.
Yes.
Yes, there should, but we're not changing that part of.
Okay.
But hold that, that's a good,
Yeah.
just general comment.
But don't you, for multifamily dwellings, require 1 parking space per unit? As a general requirement?
1.5.
1.5?
Yep.
Which we would know that by looking at 10-4-9.
Correct. Once you got there. Yes.
And next is the developer wants to put up an identification sign that this is the best apartment complex.
That's a different
And that,
chapter.
and that is a trick question because that's not in the zoning code. You need to know, there's a whole nother sign code. Yep. So now flip to our new revised code. And, okay, so we know it's an allowed use. So let's ask that question. Can you have identification signage?
The table of contents says page 223 for sign regulations. Oh, see what a table of contents is.
So, anyway.
Okay.
So
just
Point proven.
Lovely little tabs. These lovely little tabs?
You can have the lovely little
Oh,
tabs.
go fish, we gotta get them ourselves?
Right. You need them because otherwise you don't know what, you have to do it by section. Yeah.
Right.
So, that was just a quick little preview of using the old versus using the new and how reorganization and having a table of contents and page numbers makes the information much more accessible.
And Jocelyn and I talked about this, and Don mentioned it as well. It's, he said, the first step is organize it in a way that is more readable. And once you're able to do that, you can more clearly see these nuances and these policy type issues that come up. But right now you get so lost in just, that you can't rise above it to address the things we really need to address as a city. So I think this is a fantastic first step. I'm really looking forward to it.
And if we have this skeletal outline making a change in the future, and in the past, it's just been haphazardly stuck here, there, everywhere, and you get lost and get screwed. Here, you know where to put it.
Yes.
Hopefully properly.
Yes. Well, and one of the organization things, as I said, we tried to combine like information in one place. So the idea is you only have to go to one section of this new document to make a change. Whereas in the old one, you might have had to go to 2 or 3 different sections.
If you found them all.
If you found them all. So there you go.
Great.
All right.
Anything else for Summer? I have one more thing to show you guys.
Thank you, Summer.
Thank you. And again, if you have any other comments, please feel free to forward them along.
I make a general comment?
Sure.
Yeah. You know, this project has been underway for close to 2 years now. Jocelyn, you've been here almost a year now. So it started a year before you came. There's been citizen involvement in this process. There are a number of citizens that were previously involved, but because it took so long to get anywhere, there are only 2 of us left.
There's 3.
So,
Three.
pardon me?
Kim's not here tonight. But,
Well, she's not here.
Yeah.
She's not here.
Right.
So my statement is that, you know, there's been a tremendous body of work that's been done by the staff and by our consultants. Significant amount of money's been spent. It's absolutely pertinent that this move on to public hearings, move before the Planning Commission to public hearings, a joint session with the City Council, and that this, I'm going to say, call it a cleanup, get implemented, so that this is the first phase. I'm an incrementalist. You know, rather than trying to eat the whole elephant all at once, this is eating a piece. And so I think it's very prudent for us to move forward with this. And I'm suggesting that to the, I still don't know whether you're a commission or a board.
We don't either.
Huh?
We don't either.
No, I didn't think you did.
They just changed it, but they didn't change it yet.
It's now.
Yeah.
No,
and
but
I think
for
that
the
message.
For the planning board to move this forward, you've done a lot of work on this. Now's the time to move it to a different level and get it done.
Yeah, I think that message has come across loud and clear, and we've conveyed that message to the mayor and to the acting city manager now that this is a priority for the planning board to get this, you know, to completion and not to be shelved, given that we've, you know, we're 90% there, you know. So we've definitely have expressed this as a priority and that we want council to give it the time that it needs for it to be completed.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of detail that's been looked at. I think you have to have some trust that the consultant and the staff and the planning board and the citizens that have been involved have done a reasonable job. You know, we can't, I mean, I didn't read 220 pages today, but I looked through it and I said, you know, we've done great discussion. There have been some controversial issues on some topics, which are for another date, another time.
Well, and I will echo with that and say that I think this group has done a great job in coming up with this document, but also creating the structure for what comes next after this is done and for the continuing work in that list of policy discussions and, you know, in having those conversations around those issues. You guys have created that solid framework.
Great, great. I just have one quick thing I want to share with you guys. And sorry, the website screen is not working that well. But recently, Community Development, working with our IS, our IT department, created an updated version of the online, it used to be called the Project Activity List. And I just pulled it up here because I wanted to share it with you guys. And it's, we are excited about it. There's a couple great new features. One, And the intention behind it is to have all the information about any development happening throughout the city. So if you want to just check this out and see what's going on in your neighborhood, or you drive by down Santa Fe every day and you want to know what's going on, you can get on this interactive site now and find out all the information. We have added concept meetings. So concept meetings are are meetings that we have with an applicant or a potential applicant before they would actually submit a formal application. So it's everything from concept meetings. You can search by recent submittals. The other thing that's great about this is that we went through a long process to come up with naming conventions. So when you click on all of these applications, it'll use the same terminology. So in theory, you'll be able to say, oh, I get a site plan. Oh, I see the site plan on this other application. Everything will be the same. That's been something we struggled with the past. So we're pretty excited about it. And I just wanted to share it with you so you can check it out on your own. But this is how it'll all look for everything that you pull up. I'm sorry, it's really terrible on that screen. But here it'll have always like the application, letter of intent, if there's public meeting, site plan, traffic, engineering, any document associated with that review will be on this screen. So it's just, we have it generally now. This is just the next evolution, which provides more timely information, as well as, like I said, all the naming conventions. So it'll all use the same terminology. So it should make it much more streamlined and easier to navigate from anyone's home computer. And you can do it either mobile app or by computer. And honestly, if you have questions after you've looked at it, please call staff and we can help you walk through it. But we're pretty excited about it. So
Yeah, that's
just
great.
wanted to
How
mention
quickly
that.
do things get on here? So is it once you, at the concept phase, so is it 24 hours, 48 hours? How does?
Yes, so the other thing is it's really narrowing down redundancy. We were having to manually, we use the tracking software we use is called Trackit. But then the project activity list was a standalone thing, so we were having to manually upload things to that, and so the timeline, there was a lag, so it should be much more current and remain current because it's connected with the Trackit software. So it's putting information in once that is then populated in a couple different places, so it should be really much more efficient and user-friendly and really rockstar awesome if you want to look up anything going on in your neighborhood as far as new development. And always call staff too if you have any questions. But I just wanted to.
Anything going on, so if someone, so this is just, so there's a house in my neighborhood that is being torn down to the studs. Would anything like that be on there? No. It wouldn't be a single, that would be just a permit, right?
Yes, so this would be anything that requires planning approval all the way through to building permit to CO. So recent submittals, but it's not going to have just that. But recent submittals would be for any application within the last 90 days. So, yeah, it should be really great. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great.
Thanks, you guys.
Let us know when we will know whether we're a commission or a board.
Yes. Oh, yes, thank you. And two recent, follow-ups. So council did approve the written public notice. So any application that comes before planning board or city council as of Thursday, I believe is the 7-day. Any new application coming in will require a 700-foot. They did change it slightly to say they wanted a hard number of 700 feet. So the notice would be 700 feet. And on B2, after a lot of deliberation, they did decide at this point in time not to make any changes to the B2 zone district, with the caveat knowing that, we really need to move forward with conversations about updating the overall zoning code. So those are the two updates. And you do have a meeting on the 26th. And I'm trying to recall, you do have two, or one hearing case, and then tentatively we're going to have the Mineral Light Rail project as a study session, but more on that to come. So,
okay, I have I had the privilege of joining the Denver Startup Week that's going on this week. If anyone has time, stop in. There's a number of different sessions. There's actually several sessions around community development and neighborhoods. I went to one today, which was new neighbors, how to thoughtfully blend old neighborhoods with new businesses, and they used the Rhino District as an example. And there's 2 more tomorrow that are around that would be relevant for us to go to. They're short, some are an hour long, some are 2 hours long. So if you're in the Denver area, downtown Denver, it's in different locations. It's free. All you have to do is just register for it. So I encourage everyone to take a look if you have the time. Easy and really good speakers.
You're doing more land use this year. Last year it was more business oriented.
That's right. I noticed that too.
A lot more development in general this year.
All right, I think we are done. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.